is a well-known story told by the great Sufi poet and mystic Rumi of King Tariq of Kabul. Now, King Tariq was a very fair and just monarch. He followed the ways of the mystics of Islam, the great Sufis. He often pondered on the illusory nature of life and death, the ways of the emotions. But then one night, King Tariq slept, and in his sleep he had a dream. He dreamt that his only and beloved son, Daud, died. In his dream, the great emotions of loss overwhelmed him, and he felt he himself was dying with grief. When he awoke from his dream, he used the ways of the great Sufis to bring peace to his heart and his mind. But he was left with a feeling of great unease, and fear took over his mind. He thought to himself, "My life is finite. This is my only son. If he does not have an heir, there will be no continuing of our kingdom." So, in this way, he was brought to the decision that it was now time to find a wife for his beloved son, Daud, in order for them to have a progeny before he passed away, so that he could be assured that there would be a continuum of his kingdom. Now, at the same time, as another part of this story, there was in King Tariq's kingdom an old woman by the name of Aliyah. Now, Aliyah was 80 years old. She was a crone. She was a hag. Her brows hung down, her breasts were down to her navel, the skin hung from her arms and her legs. But Aliyah had never known real love. She longed for companionship. She longed to be enfolded, and even though she'd had many lovers in her long life, never had she felt fulfilled. Never had she felt that embrace that allowed one to feel comfort, that union that brings the bliss of oneness. Now it so happened that the object of her passion was King Daud, Prince Daud himself. Every time he rode past on his stallion, she would bedeck herself. She tried everything. She propped up her breasts. She put black around her eyes, but to no avail. He never noticed her. He never even looked her way. In her desperation, she thought that the holy books had some power, so she cut up pieces of the Quran and she pasted them on her face and all over her, thinking that that would be a magnet for him. But still, when he rode past, he did not even look her way. In the meantime, King Tariq sought a suitable princess to marry his beloved son, and in a distant kingdom a suitable maiden was found, one who not only was kind and sweet and beautiful, but also had a loving, compassionate heart. She also was a seeker after truth. Now, while all the arrangements were being made for the wedding, Aliyah decided that in a desperate measure she would go to Satan himself to find the means to win her passionate, beloved Daud. When she went to Satan, she begged him, and he just tried to, "Get away, old woman, don't you see who you are and what you are? Look at you." But she harangued him and harassed Satan until finally he said, "Look, here, take this powder, and next time you see him, you shower it on him, and you will have your wish." Now Prince Daud also followed the Sufi way. He had presence. He was attentive to life. But on the day of his wedding, as he rode his stallion along the road to meet his bride, his thoughts were on his bride. So when Aliyah came out with her powder and sprayed it on him, he was not aware. But in an instant, he turned and looked at the old hag Aliyah and saw the most resplendent and beautiful female he'd ever seen in all his life. He was smitten. He jumped down from his stallion, went over and knelt down in front of her, begging her to become his wedded wife. From that instant on, Prince Daud became Aliyah's slave. He adored her. They made love. He fulfilled her every whim. Well, of course, King Tariq didn't know what had happened, but when he found out, he was in the most dreadful state. What to do? His beloved son had had a spell cast on him. What could he do? He called all the soothsayers, he called everyone that he could think of that would break this, but to no avail. After some time, King Tariq, in a state of great frustration and anguish and angst, suddenly stopped, falling down on his knees with tears rolling down his face. He said, "Oh Allah, what have I been doing?" And with his head on the floor, weeping. Just then, a light came towards King Tariq, and as it flooded over and around him, he looked up to see a celestial being. that celestial being gave him the antidote, the means of breaking this spell. King Tariq immediately implemented this, and Prince Dar awoke as though from a dream. When he looked and knew what had been happening, he was ashamed beyond measure. Taking himself to the palace and falling down on his knees in front of his father, he said, "Kill me, because I have erred and fallen into the ways of sin." With tears in his eyes, King Tariq said, "My son, it is I who have erred. Come, let us go to your bride." As they passed the road, and Prince Daud saw the hag Aliyah, now herself bereft, the great wave of compassion rolled over him, and he looked at her with a love that surpassed any love that one in human form can know. And suddenly she felt fulfilled, loved, cherished. Prince Daud married his bride, and as is the way of these stories, they begat, through the blessing of Allah, many sons. The question that arises right now out of this story is, what is this antidote? What is this that breaks this spell? What have you discovered in your life? We may not have had a visitation from a being of light to speak those words to us, but our journeying has brought us to a place where we do know the antidote. Can you now give expression to that which you know, knowing that it needs to be imparted in the coming days? What is this antidote? What breaks the spell, shatters the illusion in whatever form it takes, that is presented to us moment to moment in life?
clues in the story for me was the word sin and the man's journey to see his beloved. And he was journeying, but his mind, his heart was with his beloved. And that the other energy came into the gap of that. So he'd allowed a part of his presence to not be with themselves, and the other energy came in. So it's the reminder to be in that awareness on your journey.
Yes, we all know what happens. But the question is, what is the antidote?
Well, the word sin, as I understand its heritage, is like off the mark. So it's about kind of maybe seeing where we're off the mark, and we get little messages about that internally and externally all the time. And just to utilise those messages to bring back to the connectedness.
Stay present. He is present.
Present, absolutely. That's an absolute necessity. But still the question remains, what is the antidote?
The word that comes to my mind is trust.
Yes?
That the whole story was begat by his fear.
Yes.
And even the marriage of his son to the beautiful woman was all seeded from his fear.
Yes.
And that he didn't trust that life was going to take its own course, and that this would happen somehow anyway. And so they all went on this tangential journey that needn't have happened if you trusted in the first place. So,
but if someone came to you and said to you, I'm dying, and they didn't have any knowledge of any spirituality or any God or any faith, would the words, you have to trust, have any power and meaning for them?
no.
Trust in what?
Yeah.
The thing that comes to me is that sincere desire.
Mm-hmm.
But when we have purity of intent or seek something beyond our own needs, and this is part of the polarity there of the woman who had the strength of her desire. But when the king sought something beyond himself, the purity of his desire gave him meaning.
Okay. You have to crystallize this there, isn't it? Because this is a specific question. What is it that's there when someone does stand in front of us? Like I did the other day with my sister. She's dying and she's terribly, abjectly afraid. Terrified. what is it that we do in those moments? This antidote, this thing that shatters whatever illusions there in front of us at any time.
Is it a letting go? Surrender?
We've had to let go too.
You are there with it. Somehow.
Yes, yes.
Whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the emptiness.
Right, yes. Because in the instant, out of that comes the words that need to be spoken. And they're all powerful.
So take away all of the details and all of what it is perceived in the moment, and just allow the love to be, that permeates everything. It's the love that pours into the situations that's being transmuted, transformed in the realization in the moment. So there's nothing there except love.
Is that what you do? We have to know what we do. We have to know what we do. Otherwise, what we do is just wasted, wishy-washy, nothing. And the words, knowledge, whatever it is. That's why this story is told. It doesn't matter what words we use, what actions we take.
When you say